Welcome to the Hobby School podcast. Whether you're a seasoned hobbyist or just getting started, Hobby School is the perfect place to learn something new. My name is Dr. Destiny Kopp, and I'm your host of the podcast. But before we jump into our episode for today, the only thing I ask is that if you enjoyed the episode, please share with a friend and give us an honest review on your favorite podcast platform. This helps us get out the content to more people. I also want to invite you to get on our wait list for our next Hobby School Online Learning Summit. These are free to attend, and you can find the link to join at hobbyschool.com, which is also in our podcast show notes. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. And my special guest today is Lisa Fink. Lisa is a course creator, former teacher, blogger, puzzle lover, and mom to 4 Yorkies. She's also a 7-figure online business owner, reaching the top 1% seller status on Etsy and Teachers Pay Teachers in a noticeably short amount of time. She has refined her skills so that she can share them with other like-minded creatives. And Lisa, thank you so much for joining me. I cannot wait to jump into all the questions that I have for you. But before we get into those, can you tell the good audience just a little bit more about you and how you help people?
Absolutely. First, I wanted to say thank you so much for having me. I love having the opportunity to share my story. And before I give a background to my story, what I do today is help teachers or Etsy sellers create printables that, even though there is a saturated market, I have templates and techniques that help them stand out on the platform that they choose. And most importantly, I want to encourage people to understand that it is very possible to turn a $5 product or a $10 product into thousands of dollars of revenue.
I cannot wait to jump into all of this, and I definitely want to know more about those techniques. But tell us a little bit first about your journey and how did you get into all of this? Like how did it, was it something that you've always wanted to do, or did it fall in your lap? Or take us from, a few years ago and tell us about your journey.
Sure. So I was a classroom teacher for 15 years, and in 2017, in August, my husband and I bought a new house. Well, 1 month later, he lost his job of 20 years, and we became very anxious and nervous about how we were going to pay the bills and how we were going to afford this new mortgage. And I had heard of Teachers Pay Teachers, where teachers post and sell their lesson plans online. But what I had only been is the buyer side, not the seller side. But once my husband lost his job, I knew that there was something that I had to do to bring in a little bit of extra income. And to be honest, when I started, I was hoping maybe an extra $100 to $300 a month, with a goal in 1 year being $500 per month. But it's been a wildly amazing roller coaster ride. And just 6 months in, I was already having 5-figure months. And with that knowledge of printables and Teachers Pay Teachers, in 2021, I decided to open an Etsy shop. And I don't sell the same educational products as I do on Teachers Pay Teachers. It's a completely different audience. And on Etsy, I sell printable games and escape rooms for kids. But my big lesson came during COVID, because classrooms shut down. Teachers weren't buying lesson plans because schools weren't in session. And so my sales really took a nosedive, because all of my sales were in one basket. All of my eggs were in one basket. So in 2021, I decided to open an Etsy shop with my brother, who is also a puzzle lover. And we do escape rooms, murder mysteries, scavenger hunts, things like that. And both stores are multiple six-figure earners, and it has just been an amazing journey that I do not regret.
So, Lisa, the next question I have for you is around Etsy. I know a lot of people who are listening here are interested in selling on Etsy, and maybe even they've dipped their toes into selling there and put some products up on Etsy, whether it's, handmade products that they've made or even digital products, but they're not seeing the kind of success that you're seeing. Can you walk us through how did you figure out the magic bullet there, because it seems to me that you figured it out. How did you figure it out? Was it somebody that told you, or did you learn it on your own? And then I definitely want to get into some of those techniques that you mentioned a few minutes ago.
Sure. So I would say my journey came with honestly just a lot of trial and error. When I first opened my Etsy shop, I was creating 10 question trivia games that were only 1 to 2 pages long. And you know what? They did not sell. So what I realized is that if someone can easily recreate what I have, it's not going to be a top earner. It's not going to be a bestseller. What makes someone successful with printables is creating something that is not easy to recreate. On Etsy, it is not about the quantity, which is what I used to think, but it is about the quality of the content. And more than just the product itself, you need to have a cover that shares or showcases what your purchasers are getting. You need to have thumbnails that stand out, that really answer all of the questions that the buyer may have when they're looking at your product. And you want some sort of emotion to kind of spark in the buyer that makes them say, hey, I want to look at this, or I'm going to click on this listing and read the description and learn more. So really the focus is the product itself. Is it something that can easily be recreated? And we know that everyone nowadays knows how to use Canva. Or is it something that takes a lot of thought? Many people recreate these games with one-page Canva templates, and those just aren't, they just don't have that spark and that creativity that people are looking for. And so what I did was really search the internet for success stories. There's so much free advice on YouTube. A lot of Etsy sellers have webinars or master classes that you can join. So all of my knowledge honestly comes from free tools or free courses or free products. So I encourage people to really look at some established Etsy sellers, and more than likely they have some sort of lead magnet that's free that they want to give you to get you on their email list. And a lot of times they contain really valuable golden nuggets of information. And so I kind of pieced all of that together. And don't get me wrong, I have gone back to products and updated them or revamped them. I have a tendency to be a perfectionist. But the best part about printables, it is sort of a set it and forget it mentality. Once you've posted it, once you love how it looks, it can generate passive income for weeks and months and years down the line.
And I know that people are listening, they're creative, they love to come up with new ideas and new products and create things. What would you say if they were wanting to set up an Etsy store to sell printables? Where would you suggest they start? Is there a specific niche that they should get into, or how should they go about that process? What research should they do?
Sure. So I have already done a lot of keyword research for my Etsy shop. And like I said, I create escape rooms for kids, for party games, for rainy day activities. What's really unique about this niche of printables for kids is that there is a high demand on Etsy, but the competition is low. If you were to put in printable escape room for kids on Etsy and do a search, the results are less than 6,000. And I know 6,000 might sound like a really large number to some, but to me, that is a tiny number. If you were to put escape room in the search bar on Teachers Pay Teachers, there's over 30,000 results. So I feel like Etsy, there is still room for everyone, and it is really an untapped market. The party games, the escape rooms, the puzzles, something that parents want to entertain their kids that doesn't require screen time.
So that's a good point. And if they're wanting to do that type of research, do they do that on Etsy, or is there another website that they need to go to do that keyword research, really to find out what the demand is, but also the competition, as you mentioned?
Right. So you can do that on Etsy, but you won't get a lot of data. You can use keyword research tools like Everbee, eRank, or Insight Factory, and a lot of them come with a free version. You don't have to have a paid plan to dive in. If you're looking for basic information, then you can simply use the free tools that they offer.
Okay, and we'll make sure that those links are in the show notes so people know how to find those search tools. You mentioned a few minutes ago that you have figured out some techniques to stand out. And I think pretty much no matter what we're doing on Etsy or in our business, we definitely want to stand out in the marketplace and get noticed and have that visibility. What are some of the techniques that you have learned throughout this whole process?
Some of the techniques I have learned to stand out is really to create something that's not easy to reproduce. And what I'm not saying is that you need to create a game that's 248 pages long. What I'm saying is if you're creating a game for kids, don't create a basic word search or a boring find something blue type of scavenger hunt. So for example, I sell scavenger hunts in my Etsy shop, multiple versions of them. In some of them, there's a clue that leads them to the next location, but there is a cipher there or a puzzle that they have to solve in order to go to the next location. Other things that really matter when standing out are your page elements. Honestly, the borders you choose, the fonts you choose, the clip art you choose. A lot of mistakes new sellers on Etsy make is their font choices and the size of their fonts. Now, even though those cursive fonts look really fancy and nice, they're extremely difficult to read on mobile. So what you're looking for on your cover, the first impression that everyone sees from you is a large, chunky font that stands out. And when it comes to thumbnails on Etsy, you really want to show the product in action. You want to leave no questions unanswered. You want to show them exactly what they're getting, how they set it up, what the kids are going to do, if there's extra materials needed, so on and so forth. And lastly, I would say, especially with AI now and tools like Chat GPT, I think one of the most difficult things new sellers have is SEO, or search engine optimization. What I advise people to do is to write up a description about their product and then put it into Chat GPT or an AI tool and ask them to rewrite it for you. And when you do this, you are going to get lots of foundational elements that you want to include. It's going to take some tweaking and it's not going to be perfect, but just having that extra set of sentences or descriptive words that really draw in the buyers is really helpful for when you're not sure what to write. And even ChatGPT can generate a list of keywords for you, long tail keywords for you that you want to focus on for your product description. Again, another mistake that I see in descriptions is sometimes they're 1 to 2 paragraphs, 3 to 5 sentences, and that's it. That's not enough to pull in your buyers. You really need to put in as many details as possible, what they're getting, how many puzzles there are, what age group this activity is best suited for. Is anything that you can think of that a buyer might ask you, include that in your description. You want all questions to be answered. You want the buyer to say, yes, you've answered all my questions. This is exactly what I'm looking for.
And I loved how you brought up using AI and Chat GPT to help us with this process. And we all know that it's not perfect, but it does kind of streamline the process for us. And so I guess my next question is, if somebody is considering getting into Etsy and selling the printables, but they are really struggling in terms of what kind of products to have, or how to design them, would you suggest going to like an AI like Chat GPT to kind of help kickstart their thinking there?
To be honest, AI generates the questions, but not really the page layout. If you're looking for templates that are basically pre-made for you, where the fonts are chosen, all of the page elements are correct, and the graphic design is done for you, then you should look for something like Easy Escape Rooms, which is one of my signature courses, or a template from anyone else. But the key to templates is changing things up so that yours doesn't look like everyone else's. But inside Easy Escape Rooms, with the templates I use, you can change the layout of the page, you can change the borders, you can change the colors, you can change the fonts, tie in all of your branding and make it unique to yourself, but to save time, to not have to do all the puzzle research. If you know nothing about graphic design, then templates for me are 100% the way to go. And once you get the hang of things, your brain is going to be teeming with ideas of other things you can create. And once you see a template from a well-established seller and what good graphic design looks like, then you can go on and create your next product line or your next activity.
So, Lisa, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. Before we hang up here, do you have any last minute tips for the audience?
I would say branding matters, and try to think about it from the beginning. The font you choose in your logo matters. The color you choose in your logo matters. The layout of your covers matters. The goal is that when someone sees one of my covers, regardless for what type of activity it is, they say, oh, that's a think tank product. I've seen them before. I know them. I like them. I'm going to click on this. You want to be recognizable to your audience once they become a little familiar with you, and you can use your branding, of course, in social media as well to gain exposure and send traffic to your store.
So, such great tips there. Lisa, before we hang up, can you let folks know where they can find you? I believe you have a free gift for them too. And I also want to include the link to your Etsy shop in our show notes too.
So my business is Think Tank Teacher on Etsy, though. We are Think Tank Escape Rooms. And I have a free 80-page getting started on Etsy guide for new Etsy sellers that want to learn to create printables for kids. The focus is on printables, but it also goes over branding and product optimization and SEO and covers and all of the juicy details that I didn't know when I was starting out. But now you can get all of my advice on what to do and what not to do on Etsy.
So they could use that if they want to start a printable shop, or if they want to sell like handmade items on Etsy, it would work for that too.
It technically would work for handmade, but it doesn't cover shipping and handling or anything like that, or physical products. This is more for someone who wants to create printables. But it doesn't just have to be printables for kids. You know, it can be a planner or a house cleaning schedule. It's for people that want to sell printables.
Perfect. And we will have that link in the show notes. And Lisa, again, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for listening today. Don't forget to sign up for the waitlist so you'll be the first to know when our next free Hobby School online learning summit launches. The link is in the show notes for this episode, or you can go to hobbyschool.com, and that's Hobby School with school without an H in it. Talk soon.